Good evening and thank you for coming. My name is Natalie Sayre and I'll be the moderator for this evening's event. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronic devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate as it is being recorded for on-demand viewing and post-captioning services. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The system provides clean funding for qualified participating candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules. These include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, and participating in commission debates. We encourage audience questions, so please utilize the note card given to you when you enter the room and hold it up. Our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, just raise your hands. If you have a question for a specific candidate, please include the candidate's name on the note card and it will be considered during the second half of the debate. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all of the questions, but we will do our best. Tonight's debate includes 1-minute opening statements. The first half of the debate begins with 2 minutes to each candidate to answer the same question. After all candidates have responded, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds. We will rotate which candidate responds first. The second half will allow for a different question per candidate with 1 minute to answer, and some questions will have an optional 30 seconds for the other candidates to comment on the topic. And finally, 1-minute closing statements. We ask that you remain polite to all of the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. Tonight's participants are Mr. J.L. Mueller, a Republican candidate for State Senate in District 7, Ms. Jamasita Peshlakai, a Democratic candidate, State Senator for District 7, and Mr. Doyle Shamley, a Republican candidate for State Representative in District 7. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order, by last name starting with the Senate for opening comments, and will progress from that starting point. The order for the second half will be determined by reverse alphabetical order, by last name starting with the House. So at this point in time, JL, will you start your opening remarks, please?
My opening remarks. First, thanks for coming. Thanks for the invitation. My campaign for Arizona Senate LD7 is to create a program I call Arizona Vested. It's an investment program, new jobs, new business program for the average everyday Arizonan. I believe it's something that will really benefit our state and each of us individually. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Jamasita.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you to everybody that is here this evening. I'm really honored to have been invited, and then really also honored to have been the state senator for the last 2 years. Jamesita may basically dashijane tratnesa ninshlido can chitni bashichin twadachitni dashiche sanjikine dashanele. I am Diné Navajo. I was born and raised here in the district. I went to public school in Tuba City, and a veteran of the Persian Gulf War. I was in the Army 8 years. I'm also a mother. My children have gone to school here, and I have seen the Arizona grow, and I want to see all the diversity of LD7 equally represented, and us taking care of the future for all future generations, for our children, whether it be economy or environment. But thank you for letting me be here and speak. Yeah.
Thank you. And Doyle.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name is, again, Doyle Shamley. I reside in Eager, Arizona, and I appreciate everybody attending this evening. I have a very small set of goals if successfully elected. Based on my past experience, I sit on the U of A's board at the Natural Resource Law and Policy Center. Also chairman of State Prescribed Fire Council, Eager Planning and Zoning, and I just retired in June from Apache County Board of Supervisors. So I've had to run the hallways and districts and issues a lot. Quite frankly, we need economic development in rural Arizona. We need to restore services that the state has cut back, that we're just as deserving as anybody of in rural Arizona, and we need to fill some of the gaps that have been created by the budget and the spending process and get that process under control in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll start with you, Jamasita. What would be your top priorities in the legislature, and what would be the first piece of legislation that you would want to pass if elected?
Thank you, Natalie. I think right now the issue is education. And myself being a product of public education in Arizona, we need to invest in our children, and the children are our future. We have taken too much away from them, and it's ongoing. The budget hasn't been restored. Teachers are getting a lot of promises, but when you give with one hand and take with the other, we're not being equally treated. And so rural Arizona is part of Arizona, and if you ask me, the most important part of Arizona, because every part of the growing economy of Arizona goes into Maricopa County, and we don't get that back when we're out here. So that is one of the things that I would like to see. And what was the other half of the question?
What would be your first piece of legislation you would want to introduce?
There's a lot of issues, but I think in my experience with the Department of Education, with the Department of Indian Education, there's only one person there, and we have 22 tribes here in the state of Arizona. And you look at that, and other states in the country, they have 20, 30 staff. And so that does not give equal value and prioritization of Native American children. So, and a lot of our children go to the community colleges and the universities. Our tribes put in a lot of money into scholarship programs, and we want to have those children educated. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle, your response.
Oh, yes, ma'am. One of the key things I see that benefits an active, vibrant economy, protects public health and safety, our watersheds, our habitat, and benefits schools is utilization of our state school trust lands. Upon statehood, every state legislature to enter into the union had to agree to the sections of state school trust land in perpetuity to fund our schools, maintain them, and expand them. It's largely been neglected. We have 13 million acres in Arizona under the state school trust system, as it's called, largely underutilized. Yet we're overgrown by 400% on biomass. We're destroying our watersheds and habitat for ungulates and many other species. We need to fix some of the antiquated statutes that don't allow disposal of the woody biomass materials to the renewable energy sectors and value-added sectors like heating pellets, what's called torrefied chips, engineered strand boards, et cetera, and start creating that economy, start building that education fund. That's the whole purpose of the 13 million acres, and start putting rural Arizona back in a game position to drive this economy. Oftentimes that our districts of rural Arizona are treated as such as like a playground often for the larger areas. Our playground is going to continue to burn down and degrade if we don't start actively managing it and become proactive and responsible with these renewables. So that would be one of my earliest pieces of legislation.
Okay, thank you. JL.
Now, I agree that education is number one, because if we don't improve the state of education overall, even out the teachers' pay with other states, we're going to wind up in the same position of a dead economy in another 5 years. Probably worse if things don't pull out of the tailspin we're in right now. The plan I have called Arizona Vested, which I urge everyone to go to research on my website. I touch on the way it works. It's just a program that allows the average individual to create their own business and the other average individual, including themselves, to invest in other businesses. So it would be like a little NASDAQ here in Arizona, or a Dow, if you're familiar with trading and investing. Once we have this underway, we would have ample funds to put into the schools, into our infrastructure, and hopefully get the federal government off our back in a lot of areas where they're a little bit too oppressive, in my opinion. And like I said, the plan, Arizona Vested, is something to give the little guy with an idea an equal chance with other people, with other big companies. Small or large, it's really the only way we can work things out. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jamasita, additional 30 seconds.
Well, thank you for the additional 30 seconds. Well, I agree with Mr. Shamley here. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the legislature is being able to work across the aisle with my colleagues. And Legislative District Number 7 is the largest district in the United States. It includes the Grand Canyon, Monument Valley. These are natural resources that are the most beautiful part of Arizona, and we need to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. So my understanding is we have an additional candidate who has arrived, Mr. Orlando Teller, a Democratic candidate for state representative in District Number 7. And in one moment, we'll add you to the table and give you a moment to give your opening statement. So at this point in time, we'll pause the debate until we can make that accommodation. So we are back. We will just continue the questioning. We have added Mr. Orlando Teller to the lineup of our candidates. So next question, we'll start with you, Doyle. 2 minutes, and then we'll rotate from that point forward. So how can LD7, the northern portion, be helped in eliminating their high unemployment rate?
I believe a few mechanisms need to come into play. First off, I think we need a fair shake in the community college system. For instance, Apache County does not have a community college district, and it's very viable to have one formed and needs to occur. Because we pay horrendous rates off of secondary taxing districts to pay other local and municipal colleges. And that's to the detriment of our taxpayers and parents trying to pay for their college children to go. Secondly, the facet that I mentioned earlier is a vast industry. The woody biomass utilization industry is booming in the sense of renewables and those engineered strand boards and heating wood pellets and other areas. We also, when you mentioned northern Arizona and our unemployment rate, those jobs are ripe for the picking to improve the job market and economy both. These industries in particular have a higher level of stickiness than normal in the sense that the money tends to stay in the area where it's generated, less than leaving. With that would definitely help. The education outreach, as I already covered. And I also truly believe, back again to some of those opening remarks, that if the state of Arizona will give us equal footing and treatment in all areas, we can naturally progress and let the economy excel. We have been greatly curtailed in HERF funding compared to other regions. The HERF funding needs to be fixed in Arizona. We need those state assets equally divided as the municipalities get in the large areas. And if we have our road networks fixed, it's already been proven, we can lower juvenile delinquency and truancy, we can increase public safety response, and increase attrition of workers and new companies in development.
Thank you. Orlando, 2 minutes.
Thank you. The question is unemployment being addressed in LD7. I concur with Mr. Doyle Shamley's responses. Education is key to our opportunities from K through 12, additionally to the community colleges. And we need to look for opportunities and support those opportunities that encourages our youth to continue their education, either vocationally or traditional means. As Mr. Doyle Shamley shared, transportation infrastructure is the key for rural Arizona. If we can improve it, if we can maintain it, and we can expand it as far as the transportation infrastructure in rural Arizona, northern Arizona, then the economy comes right afterwards. A good example are transportation infrastructures on Navajo. Improving it brings people back home, and also it brings the people that are improving these economies to stay at the hotels and also eat the food as well. And so I also support the idea of the economic opportunities for mom and pop shops. Those mom and pop shops are the engines for those small communities in rural Arizona. They're the ones that stay open at night, provide Pampers and food when the other big shops are closed. So the mom and pop shops are critical to the small communities. Thank you.
Thank you. JL,
Yes, on the
same question.
same question. Well, as I've been stating, the Arizona Vested program I have is something set up to allow individuals to begin their own business, to become investors. But I also want to push for an Arizona Meat and Agricultural Department where we grow and sell high-grade meat and agriculture to other states, export it around the world, and become known as the state that provides that type of thing. I'd like to bring the entertainment industry into Arizona. That's actually the #1 industry in the world, and right now we don't have an office for it. But my plans would outline bringing that office into play. One other thing to end this dead-end job issue, especially for our youth. We want to give them something that they can stick around and stay at home with, or not bail out and head to another state. One other thing is pushing an international, well, first national, then an international STEAM program, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And once we have a program with the schools, we could look for competition with other schools nationally and then internationally and make it a big thing, keep our children excited to be in school and excited to go on to colleges or to training for various jobs. Thanks.
Thank you. Chamasita.
Thank you, Nancy. Well, I think I do agree with all my the folks up here, the other candidates, and I think the key is diversifying the where we get how we generate money here in Northern Arizona. And I grew up with my father and my family entertaining tourists along the Grand Canyon. So if you've ever seen the Brady Bunch goes to Grand Canyon, you see the Native Americans dancing. That wasn't really me, but I was one of those folks. But the thing is, I've traveled all over the world with the Army, and this is the only place on the face of this earth that you can buy things that are made here by the people that live here that are real. And we have a gem here in Northern Arizona with our Native Americans, the handmade products. You go to any town, St. John's, Eager, Cameron, Arizona, you go anywhere and you will find things that are made by the people there. And I think the tourism industry, we need to invest back in our small businesses, like Mr. Teller said, and really generate the opportunity for people to excel and succeed and be able to sustain themselves and send their children to college. And we're really a unique place in this world, and I think we really need to embrace that, because there's not any other place quite like Northern Arizona. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doyle, an additional 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am. One of the items touched on in the small businesses is utterly critical. We have some very unique opportunities in our region. I've worked at length with Navajo Beef and 14R Ranches, as well as the organic beef producers down in the southern part of Apache County and stemming on down into Graham County. That is an industry just waiting to break through if we get some of the government encumbrances out of their way.
Thank you. Our next question will start with you, Orlando. Multiple people in the audience have asked, what is your position on fracking? 2 minutes.
My position on fracking, that is a technology that has its positives and its negatives. And I stand right next to the opportunities that are had with the technology. At the same time, my other foot is on respecting and honoring the resources that we have here in Northern Arizona. We have, as you heard from Senator Peshligai, a delicate resource here, and I would love to see this resource be enjoyed by our great-grandchildren, 7 generations from where we sit. And if we can find a technology that does not fracture the crust of the earth, that causes artificial earthquakes or any other concerns, then I'm open to those technologies. But as today, I do not support fracking. Thank you.
Thank you. JL, your position.
Now, although fracking is a great job opportunity, still I have to say we have one water table, and even the slightest chance of dumping a cup of toxic chemicals into that, to me, it's not worth it, especially since there's many other ways to produce energy and to get fuel, biofuel, and I really don't think we need to take that little chance. That's it, that simple.
Thank you. Jamisita, your position.
Thank you, Nancy. Well, I have family up in Colorado between Grand Junction and Glenwood Springs. And many years ago, the little towns in that valley of Parachute, Colorado, up through Rifle started fracking, and they thought it was the next big boom industry for their valley. And now those folks cannot drink their water, and it is something that will come back to be something that we really regret. And I stand firmly against fracking, because you don't know what's going to happen when you release chemicals in the earth. We don't know what that's all about, and we don't need to take that chance, because here in Arizona, water is the biggest resource that we need to protect, and not just for us, but for our children, like Mr. Teller said. And these are things that we should not mess with. And you know, one of the things that I was raised as a traditional Native American person, and these things are have life, have spirit, have a deity, and we simply don't know what we're messing with as human beings when we do that. And I've seen the consequences myself, traveling up through Grand Junction and Rifle, and so that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle, your position on fracking.
Actually, having had to deal with natural resources so long in various fields that always seem to tie themselves to the watershed and riparian area habitat, et cetera. At this point right now, I personally am undecided due to the fact that there's so much conflicting information, and I think I know some of the reasons why. First off, when I have attended exposés and seminars, the industry side will, of course, praise the benefits of it solely, and I get that. They are giving us empirical data based on job creation, tax revenue, et cetera. But I have also seen the agencies and industries both in cahoots in public hearings not display all the cumulative impacts, whether they're economic or environmental, either one. The unfortunate side of that is oftentimes industries, not just fracking, but in the field of resources, are allowed to go on too many unknowns where judicial activism and not science rules the day. Now, I have been able to, as a county supervisor, the lists are free for all the public mining hearings, including this very topic, and distribute those throughout the websites, and I've gone to the hearings. And over again, despite public debut of the meetings and hearings by the state licensing entities, I will routinely be the only person from Apache County and Phoenix at the hearing. So until we start getting some active public and educational input, I don't think that we can weigh in on the issue of permitting fracking or not at this point. It hasn't been fully vetted yet by any side.
Thank you. And Orlando, an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. Again, I do not support fracking. There's industry in Eastern Navajo that the BLM and the BIA are permitting industry to come in close to the Chaco Canyon as well as the Crow Canyon. These are precious archaeological traditional sites for many cultures, and the concerns are delicate. So again, I just don't support it until there's another technology that showcases. Then that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. JL, we'll start with you on this one. How would you propose to help the underserved veterans in LD7 and statewide?
Well, now we have, thank you. We have various reasons that they're underserved. You know, you have to go with the emotional reasoning where they don't want to have anything to do with anybody. that's not a reason we would not seek them out to help them and guide them back into, normal life. I would like to push for outreach programs, whether private sector or maybe even the state government, the county government gets involved. Home Depot's doing a great job with the cabins up the road in Pine Top, if anybody's aware of that. We have to push those type of programs to, it's tough to word it this way, to pull them out of the woodwork, pull them out of their, the places they may be hiding away because they're a little bit shell-shocked or PTSD, whatever term you want to use. Those actively seeking help, they're the easy ones. It's those that are not actively seeking help. So I would push for public and private programs. And they can be funded through my Arizona Vesta program too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jamasita.
Nancy, can you repeat the question?
Yes. How would you propose to help our underserved veterans in LD7 and statewide?
Thank you. Well, as a veteran, as a Native American veteran, one of the things that I have come to know is here in the state of Arizona, the 22 tribes that we have a large number of Native American veterans in Arizona. And one of the things that the VA does not have within the federal code of federal regulations is Native American tribes. So Native American U.S. territories and states work with the VA. They get benefits, but tribal nations do not. So the Native Americans, we have the highest number per capita. We are not getting services. We're not getting claims and benefits. And if we have 11,000 Native Americans, 15,000 Native Americans, they're not getting VA benefits. They're not being able to help their communities, take care of their families. That's money that we here in Arizona are missing out that could go back into our stores, into the economy. That's money that could be coming back into the county coffers. This is money that remains untapped because the VA is not out here doing outreach to the Native Americans and to the rural veterans because they're just simply not helping them apply. And that's something that we need to work on, and working with the Arizona Department of Veterans Services. And one of the things that I did in the last couple of legislative sessions is ask for more money for claims and benefits officers doing outreach, whether it be mobile or even using a phone and tablet. And those are things that is an untapped revenue source. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle.
I'm a veteran myself, decorated in combat, and I took this issue very seriously after doing the studies. Not only as a county supervisor, but I sit currently on the National Veteran and Service Members Committee for the National Association of Counties. Here's the simple facts. In Arizona, it goes back to some of the earlier responses I gave you. The Arizona Department of Veterans Services is actually not even in statutory compliance with their services in rural Arizona. They have not only mileage but population densities to serve, and they are not. We need to fix that because it's already statutorily there. We need to just force that state agency to do the services they are already tasked with doing. Secondly, not knowing that the VA system is all but broken, the quickest way if you really want to heal veterans is to go private. It's better for the economy, it's better for healing, and to do that, I've already traveled as a member and worked with the American Warrior Partnership, Focus Marines, Marine Corps League, Army for Life, all the big entities in the country. And we've gone private like many counties and areas have had to do around the country. The private care is quicker, more concise, has higher healing rates, better economy of scale. And in fact, next week is a public meeting on those very topics for veterans in the Round Valley, Eager, and one in Window Rock, to be fair to all the populations involved. about the outside services that we've been able to get funded through private institutes and foundations that are coming right here to rural Arizona. I did that in conjunction with partners due to the state and Fed not stepping up to the plate and doing their job.
Thank you. And Orlando?
Thank you for that question. First and foremost, I support mental health services in addressing our veterans who come back wounded in some fashion. And so in addressing those unseen wounds, we need to provide services that are open for them, available for them, particularly with mental health. Secondly, I would encourage vocational trainings, vocational opportunities for veterans who have ability to try another skill, try out another opportunity, in, I think, keeping the mind occupied and keeping their abilities sharp. So that would be an encouragement on my end. Additionally, working in an innovative and partnership mentality is really important in addressing our veterans. Innovation, as Senator Peshlegai mentioned, taking advantage of our smartphones, taking advantage of our tablets, taking advantage of those wireless opportunities that allow our veterans to communicate with whomever they need to, service for health service or otherwise. Partnering with other agencies. Again, as you heard from Mr. Shamley, the state of Arizona is not doing what they can to assist in this effort, as well as the U.S. Veterans Administration. But if we can partner with private industry, partner with other programs to address the simple needs of these veterans is really critical to the success of rural Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. And JL, an additional 30 seconds.
Well, everyone here seems to have great ideas, and I agree with everyone. But again, if it's on a state level, a local level, we do need funding if we're going to take care of this. And again, that's where I go back to my Arizona Vested program, because I truly believe it's the only way that we're going to put money into the state coffers, you know, through taxes, through fees, whatever, and money into our pockets. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. We will start with you, Jamasita, on this one. So LD7 is an extremely large district that is predominantly reservations and a small area of non-Native Americans. How would you adequately or actually represent all of your constituencies?
Thank you for the question. Well, I really have to rely upon the local leadership, and everybody is an expert in what they know. And every legislator is not an expert on everything. So we all have to reach out to our constituents, whether they be the city council, the mayors, board of supervisors, and then we also have policy staff that help us with different things. But the people in Page are different from the people in St. John's, or the folks in Peach Springs are different from the people in Show Low. So each community and population is different, and I really have to work with those leaders. And as a Native American, you know, there's some things that I don't know. And one of the things I'm going to give you as an example is property taxes. Property taxes is different in Coconino County and Apache County, and those are things that I really have to rely on the local leadership to represent them, because I represent those folks. And so I've learned a lot from all the board of supervisors, all the mayors. Paige is looking at something really critical with the closure of NGS, and that is unique to Page. And then with the lowering of water in Lake Powell and Lake Mead, those communities are going to be impacted as well. So, you know, as a legislator, you become a conduit of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle?
We do have the largest district in America, and we have also the most diverse, according to studies in National Association of Counties and elsewhere. Part of that, I believe right now, part of our conundrum is the lack of understanding and lack of communications between the state, the Fed, and the county governments. I can speak with authority that oftentimes as a county supervisor, you were ignored and unheard by state legislature and state agencies. So there isn't a really lot of outreach in the machine and mechanism in the state of Arizona to listen to rural Arizona until we make them listen. Okay, they're focused largely on the state of Maricopa and Pima, and it's not fair to us. Secondly, we do have redistricting coming up. It's a simple statistical fact in 2020. Will have to be enacted, just, you know, and notwithstanding the court litigation that will occur by 2022. It is going to be litigated because nobody's going to do the right thing for everybody and everybody's opinion. But this is our chance, I think, to more equally spread the districts around so that the people on the ground that are close to home, that have those unique cultural and historic uses, those different tax bases, as Ms. Peshakai mentioned, are more equally representative at the state capitol. If that means smaller districts and more of them in Arizona because of growth, which we can prove has happened, I fully support that, and I am ready to embrace the redistricting. Quite frankly, large districts like this go underserved due to their expanse. It is hard to do public safety, communications, county management, roads, water, anything in an entity this large, and that's a big problem.
Thank you. Orlando, same question.
Thank you for the question. The uniqueness of this district and the preciousness of the communities that are within this district really, for me, the complexion of each community is actually humbling. And the reason why I'm saying that is because each of us in this room, if we represent a community in this district, we have our own personalities. And understanding that community's personalities, the community's desire to improve, the community's strengths, weakness, and all the opportunities that are in there, I would have to understand that. Even if it's one tribe to another, one community next to another, understanding the leadership and also assuring that the outreach on my end to these communities is imperative. Because if they don't see me, they don't think that I'm listening to them and I am voicing their concerns at the state level. So an effort on my end is critical for these different personalities of these communities. As each and every one of them have goals and they have the needs for improvement. So if we can work on understanding the complexion of each community and knowing what the educational base is, knowing what the levels of a service that is provided for each community, this is really important. It's a huge district, but certainly a very precious, unique opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thank you. JL?
Now, if anyone knows the vastness of this district, I guess it would be me, because I've traveled it on the motorcycle a couple times, as I have the state many times. Whether I was campaigning for governor in 2014, I didn't win, but I made it to the ballot, thanks to a couple ladies in this room. I believe that everyone seems to have the same problems, no matter where they're at, different issues behind them, but the same problem, and that's they're not treated fairly in the workforce, not treated fairly in the business sense that they can't just go out and do what they want to do. They can't create that business, usually from funding, rarely from their education or experience. And I have to go back to my Arizona Vesta program because that was designed for this purpose and for the vastness of this district. We have a lot of opportunity in this district with farming, with manufacturing tech out on the tribal lands. There are big tech industries looking for places to set up house, and some of those do fall on Navajo or Apache land. I think that's a great thing. We just need to go that step further and kind of get the legislature on board to help that happen. I would like to see the state senators be the people that travel the state in their districts, finding the right people to invest in their own businesses and to get this going. But the vastness both helps and it hurts, simply, through the highways and byways, which if you've never traveled LD7, you should travel it. It's a beautiful area.
Thank you. And additional 30 seconds, Jamasita.
Thank you. Well, it's true that LD7 is vast, and I often am very jealous of my colleagues at the legislature who have their districts in just a few blocks of Phoenix. And I can't canvass, I can't walk from door to door and knock on doors and ask folks how they're doing, because it's miles and miles in between, and I might get attacked by an antelope or a deer or somebody's cow or a wild dog. But one thing about me, I know that I bridge the communities of the reservations and the border towns, and that's something that we need. Thank you.
And this will be the last question for this half of the debate. We will be switching to directed questions. So again, audience, if you have directed questions, please fill out cards and write the candidate's name, who you would like to receive the question. So this is a combination of two questions. What will you do to ensure that you bring clean water to all communities and protect the Coconino Aquifer? And we will start with Doyle.
Thank you, ma'am. Two parts here. So one of the first things that needs to take place, I believe, to bring clean water to the communities is, quite frankly, I had to deal with this in my supervisory district. I got to deal with the Sanders schools and other areas, fee simple, tribal trust, and relocation lands that were uranium contaminated. Through much work, we were able to show that in the 80s, the EPA issued the memos that the water was contaminated. Yet they're barely holding meetings in 2014 and 15. We had to push hard. It took flights and work back to DC to push buttons to force new wells to be brought in and piping systems. So it can be done. It needs to be done with some of the newer technologies. I was part of some Middle East tours that came here to our great state of Arizona. We are primed to protect the Coconino watershed and develop our brackish waters in Arizona and harness more of the runoff that we don't do near as much water storage on monsoon season and record events. And we actually can have desal plants and purification plants that rival anybody in the world. The experts from around the world have come to Arizona just this year to tour, and of course, as normal, they were given every blockade by any level of government that they could see opening their doors. We need to make that more friendly to provide that water, and we need a considerable distribution center throughout LD7. That can be accomplished via pipe systems like is done in some parts of the Navajo Nation and done in other states. These proposals are very viable, very effective at protecting our Coconino watershed, yet providing the drinking water that is safe, proven clean, and we can test it routinely and monitor it for safety.
Thank you. Orlando.
So the question was, what will I do to assure clean water and to protect the Coconino Aquifer?
Correct.
And I concur with Mr. Shamley's responses. Certainly, innovative technology is important to assuring that we protect our most precious resource here in Arizona. Navajo, we say, water is life. Water provides life. water gives life. So in order to assure clean water and to protect our precious resource, we need to consider stringent policies to assure that we protect it. Working with all the departments that are associated with resources in Arizona, as well as the counties and the tribes, assuring that we protect this resource for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Jael.
Now, I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but Sholo and the local cities actually have a lawsuit going on with the tribal leaders, the local tribes, trying to, I don't know why they're not asking instead of suing, trying to keep our water supply, coming to the local cities and towns. So that is an issue that needs to be remedied right off the bat, because if we can't have the water flowing to us, we don't have any water. We can drop some wells, sure, I'll need to pay for those, and then I go back to my program. Whether it's private or public, we still need the taxes, we still need the infrastructure. So we need to get through this lawsuit and hope that the tribal leaders will understand that we just want to live here too and be able to drink clean water, or water, period, I guess, because if it doesn't flow, we don't have any. So going with the entire infrastructure concept that I've heard so far, I agree, but we do have to pay for it. And we have to get through this lawsuit, which it should have just been another agreement and, made an easy deal. But as far as getting food and the water, everything depends really on this lawsuit, which should not have been a lawsuit to begin with. Should have been an organized deal more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamasita.
Can you repeat the question?
So what is your plan to ensure clean water in all communities and your plan to protect the Coconino Aquifer?
Thank you, Nancy. Well, first, do no harm is probably a good foundation. And then also to work together with all the different communities, and that means respecting the sovereignty of tribal nations and being able to work with them as far as water. I know it's an issue that has hit Apache, Navajo, and Coconino counties. And like Mr. Doyle Sham said, so like what he said, we worked on that Sanders water issue for quite a while. There was a uranium spill in 1979 in Church Rock. That uranium came down the Perco River, went all the way down to Winslow, Arizona, and then down to the Little Colorado to the Big Colorado. And there was no public notices. There was no emergency declaration. And so we need to make sure that our constituents are informed of these things. And ADEQ is sending out emails to alert us when water is becoming dangerous in some of the communities. But I think making sure that we have funding in the water infrastructure funding, WIFA, I can't remember what the acronym is for that, but it is funding for infrastructure for communities. And I've worked with the community of Fredonia to secure funding for their dam. Is it called a dam? But anyway, it is important, and I think we all need to have all hands on deck for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doyle, your additional 30 seconds.
Part of the issues too are the external issues that our court ran. Not only of the newest, I put them out on the internet from the Hopi tribe and the various tribal entities that are going to engage on the tribal water litigation and settlements again. It is unfortunate that we're going to go to court again, which is largely going to rule based on not science but judicial activism. But we also have the fact that Waters of the U.S. that was promulgated in the last administration in D.C. is being reanalyzed and reviewed right now. All of that are going to have dire effects on water policy in Arizona.
Thank you. At this time, we will transition to the second part of the debate, where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Additionally, on some questions, the other candidates will have an additional 30 seconds to respond to the topic. I will announce that, so if you'd like that additional 30 seconds, just give me a hand so that I can call on you, and we can keep the timing on track. So audience members, again, your reminder, you can continue to submit cards and just make sure that the intended recipient's name is at the top. So Arlando, we will start with you. And this will be an additional 30-second question for everyone should you want it. So Prop 306 appears on the ballot, which is to change the clean elections. Do you support or oppose Proposition 306?
The question is if I support or oppose the changes to clean elections
Yes, that's outlined in Proposition 306.
outlined in Proposition 306. I'm unfamiliar with that, actually, so I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would any of the other candidates like to respond to that? Jill?
306 has to do with the individuals who collect the $5 contributions for clean elections to get the entire payout, being able to redirect those funds should they lose their election or just back out, redirect their funds to either another candidate or to a group or to wherever they want to send the money, provided it's within the political system. In a sense, it sounds like, oh, it's a great thing. But then again, you got to think, people were giving those $5 because they trusted that candidate to do with it what he felt best, he or she felt best. To me, it's a toss-up. I kind of like the idea of the money staying with clean elections, but then also I have to look at the people's trust that gave the $5 qualifying contributions.
Okay, thank you. So again, Doyle, I see your hand for the additional 30 seconds.
Please, ma'am. I believe we need 306. Largely the funding, the way the funding is used after a campaign with an unsuccessful candidate and the way it can be funneled under the current system is not the intent of the original legislation. I believe we need the 306 to pass because it's outside of the original scope. It's outside of the legal vetting that originally occurred. So quite frankly, the use now has exceeded the vision when it was written.
Thank you. Going once? Okay. So Doyle will continue on with the proposition support, and this again will have an additional 30 seconds to the other candidates should you wish to take it. So Proposition 305 is on the November ballot. Do you support it? What's your position?
I do, the empowerment. I'm very much for, I'll just let you know right now, as a candidate, parental choice. I've answered that way in every candidate survey I've taken, no matter what entity has sent it to me, and as well as my clean election statements. And I'm not going to deviate unless somebody can really show me some compelling data that I've somehow never found to this point. I am for it.
Thank you. Would anyone like the optional 30 seconds? I see Jamasita, so 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think Proposition 305 is very dangerous because in Arizona, we have allowed legislators to be able to benefit as individuals for themselves, to create schools and charter schools. Taxpayers have created millionaires in the state of Arizona because of charter schools. And the schools that they don't have to report back to the state. They don't have to meet standards, and that is very, very dangerous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jael?
No, not wanting to argue. Just on the charter schools versus the public schools. They are both public. The charter schools, my wife teaches at one, high school science, and they're actually very strict with their regulations. And where they say they're not overseen by the government, it's because they have a corporate structure that is overseen by the government versus a school board that is public or, you know, government run. That's really the only difference, but yes, it has made millionaires. That's it.
Thank you. All right, so we will go on to the next question. Jamasita, this is for you. What do you think could be done to address the threat of meth and opioid addiction of the youth in the rural communities?
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you to who brought up the question. I think one of the things that is that our state and our nation is facing is this addiction, and we need to put money into mental health and substance abuse programs. And one of the things that I believe as a veteran is that we've created this problem amongst ourselves. We have not been providing oversight who gets these medications and how they're utilized. There's doctors that are just prescribing these things, and we need to make sure that we are working together across communities. I know I've met in an Arizona town hall with county attorneys and talking about revamping and working on the justice system in Arizona. And one of the things that is top of the list is the recidivism rate of folks that are going through the system, and we're not addressing it very well.
Thank you. This will only be for you, Jael. This next question, can you please explain your Arizona vested in greater detail?
Yes, thanks for the question. Now, it's once I start explaining it, you're going to think, okay, because I hear it all the time. Oh, that's multi-level. That's this. That's that. It really isn't. It's each of us, well, maybe not each of us, but many of us may have had a dream business, a dream invention, something we've always wanted to do. We've never been able to get the funding. Or say we hit 50 and we've had businesses all our life, or never had a business but always wanted to. You can't get funding once you hit 50, not from a bank, unless you have some background or really great credit and, you know, a bunch of that's it.
Thank you.
Quick. Okay.
These
30
go by
seconds.
really
Wow,
quickly.
30 seconds.
That was a minute.
Sorry about that.
Arlando, this is
not a
your question only for you. What do you believe you can do personally to direct resources to rural areas for broadband communication improvements?
Thank you for that question, whoever asked that question. What do you think I can do personally to increase and encourage broadband to rural Arizona? Certainly support vetted legislation that encourages broadband opportunities to rural Arizona. Additionally, focus on funding and programs that will encourage that technology into rural Arizona. And that means infrastructure onto trust or allotment or multi-jurisdictional land, then that would be an opportunity for us to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle. So this is just for you. What experience do you have with Native Americans, and what is the most effective way you believe you can help them accomplish their goals?
My experience has been both as a consultant working on the water issues as a county supervisor. As a veteran, I'm even one of the rare non-tribal members of a Navajo Veterans Organization. It's a very rare thing. Quite frankly, talking to them in their local unique areas is one of the most efficient tools, and it's what I do routinely. They said I maybe had set a record even for burning up miles as a supervisor. Secondly, we need to encourage economic development on the Navajo Nation and more property ownership, personal property ownership, because in those areas, we have been able to entice items by helping with council delegates. In my case, like along Sanders on the fee simple lands and new bashes and new facilities there that create jobs, create encouragement, create wealth, and create stability in families and economy. We need to encourage economic development of that, and quite frankly, we've ignored a large swath of northeast Arizona and the I-40 corridor.
Thank you. Jamisita, this is for you, and there will be the additional 30 seconds afterwards, should the other candidates want it. What are the top 2 or 3 environmental issues that are most pressing in the area, and what do you propose to do about them?
I think we've covered some of it. One of them is the water issue, taking care of our water, making sure that we have clean water for future generations here in Arizona. Another one is the proposed permitting of uranium mining along the Grand Canyon. And I always tell folks that, you know, people forget that Native Americans are still alive in the United States. And every world conflict impacts even the 800-member tribe down in the Grand Canyon, the Havasupai tribe. If there's uranium mining in the Grand Canyon, it will impact not only the water table and all the way down to through California and the Gulf of Mexico, but you're looking at decimating a tribe that is rarer than a Pegasus or a unicorn or a Bigfoot. And we need to take care of these people because they are valuable.
Thank you. Optional 30 seconds. Mr. Teller, I see you. And then Doyle.
So for rural Arizona, I believe that the top 2 or 3 environmental issues impact the community or communities. Of course, the water issue. Certainly, we all had to deal with this year's drought. As Mr. Shamley mentioned, addressing that by catchment systems along the runoffs is important for the community to collect water for their plants or animals. Additionally, illegal dumping throughout the rural Arizona. That is a critical situation where we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle.
I believe as state legislatures assembled and as bodies and individuals representing our people, we need to push on the federal agencies and CEQ, which is Council on Environmental Quality. It is who promulgates NEPA. NEPA regulations are broken. They have turned in from an advisory standpoint, as they were originally intended, into a sledgehammer that doesn't often let real science get out and debut into the public. We need to revise the endangered species legislation. It has been morphed from Endangered Species Act to judicial activism.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm okay.
JL. Again, this will have a 30-second component to it. Do you have endorsements from some or all of the tribes in your district?
To be honest, I haven't asked. I don't believe in pomp and circumstance. I don't believe in going and begging for endorsements, but I believe if I can get myself in front of them, speak to them, they will agree that my plans are at least solid. Thank you.
Okay, 30 seconds. Any other candidate like to answer that? Thank you. So this will be the last round of individual questions. Mr. Teller, just as for you only, how many times have you, in your current term, held town hall meetings in the Show Low area?
As a candidate, I have not held a town hall meeting in the Show Low area. I am interested in holding a town hall meeting in the Show Low area if this question leads to that. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for Doyle with the optional 30 seconds. What's your position on legalizing cannabis?
I believe that cannabis, the legalizing cannabis as it's asked right now is rather broad and vague. I can tell you, watching a father die of cancer that I took care of at home that chose not to use any, I think he suffered more than my aunt that did choose to use it, that also died of cancer, but it eased the pain. I also am disgusted as a veteran that the same government that tells us it's safe to be in a war zone somehow can come home and marijuana is a dangerous tool for PTSD. It's already been proven it's an excellent tool for PTSD. We need to allow further study and expansion and utilization of medical marijuana for many categories in America. The plant was put here by God. I believe that it can be utilized like many other plants for the benefit of people, without abusing politics, without abusing budgets and society.
Thank you. Mr. Teller, I see you, then JL.
Thank you. I concur with Mr. Shamley. And the reason why in traditional herbalism in Navajo, it is used as a medicinal plant. We don't smoke it. We use it as a patch or a tea. So it is used as traditional medicine for us as well. And there's some benefits to that. So it is also a cash crop. So we need to think about that as far as economic development in those communities. So I concur with him. Thank you.
Thank you, JL.
Well, legalizing cannabis, I'm sure that was intended as a recreational drug. It's safer than alcohol, so I can see it being a very profitable industry if it's taxed as alcohol, treated like alcohol, and sold like alcohol. Home grow, et cetera, that is a little more complex, but it's just like, making your own wine. There shouldn't be legislation against a plant. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jamisita.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues, the other candidates here, as far as medicinal use of cannabis for PTSD, anything like that, but also not recreational use, because anytime that you have a problem off the reservation, it's 4 times as bad on the reservation, and we don't have enough police and public safety to respond to police and to these things. And I wish I could go on.
Thank you.
1 minute goes too fast.
So this is your final question. It's an audience question that has a lot of context around it, but I'm going to paraphrase it to the last part. How would you do a better job in getting funds more equitably distributed in different school districts to the students where the need is the most?
Can you repeat that question?
I certainly can. So according to the writer of the question, that various schools have an unequal distribution of cost per student or monies per student, depending on the school boards. So what would you propose to do to get funding more equitably to all students? And we'll do the optional 30 seconds for this one as well.
And whose question is this?
It's yours. We're going to start with you.
Jamesita?
Yes?
Yes, okay. You're looking at, okay. Well, it is the responsibility of the legislators that are on the education committee to make sure that these funding is going out equitably to the school districts and or per student at the schools. And so I think that if that is something that is occurring, then we need to address it. And I know that some of the different schools do have differences, and I know charter school get much more money than the public school students. And with Prop 305, I hope that we start to fund public schools, because the folks that go to the public schools are the ones that can't afford to go to private schools or some of the charter schools. So I think speaking to the legislators would be good.
Thank you. Optional 30 seconds. Doyle?
There's three things I've noticed in my career as a supervisor consultant. A, the state routinely publishes school audits that show expenditures versus cost ratio per student. In my own county, I had to get those like pulling teeth from the state. As a supervisor, mind you, on letterhead. If we display the data more openly to all the public, a lot of the problem will get fixed quickly. Secondly, there isn't a public incentive for people to serve on school boards, and they really are the backbone of this equalization and good service. Our own county school supervisor, superintendent of public schools, had to do advertisements to try to fill the positions even.
Thank you. And I'll go JL and then Orlando.
Well, first we need to end the corruption that's in the school system. It's begins with the board of directors. It's in every school, public, charter. Don't know about private, but we just need to end that corruption, the waste, and the pay to play or the good old boy system where a school takes $3 million to improve something. And they go and, somebody hires a buddy, a friend, a relative. They come in, they waste the money. Somebody pockets the money. And it's just waste and thievery.
Thank you. Orlando?
Yes, thank you. Certainly support legislation to ensure equitable distribution. And I'm sure it's a formulary based. And if it is, opening up that formula and looking back at the spirit and intent of this distribution formula, and if it's not working, then we need to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. And JL, we'll end this with you, and it'll just be for you. Public lands are being sold off through the Interior Department. What is your position on this and the plans to protect lands?
Thanks for the question. Now, it depends on what public lands we're talking about. If it's a preserve, if it's, lands that have been set aside since, say, the Theodore Roosevelt era, they shouldn't be sold off. But if it's public land that is, off the highway that's really nothing, and it can be put to use and create a tax base, a creative way of jobs, businesses, then it could and should be sold off, but that's only if it's put to use and, taxed like any other property. But not like preserves like, South Mountain down the valley or, half the places around here, that should remain in a land saving. I mean, it shouldn't go to public use. As a private sale.
Thank you. At this point in time, we will go to our 1-minute closing statements. Orlando, we will start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, my name is Orlando Teller. And this is definitely a humbling experience, and opening my eyes and my heart open to the constituents of LD7. And my background is infrastructure and transportation. For the past 26 years, I've been working in the industry, starting at Falcon Field Airport in Mesa, Sky Harbor, and also Department of Transportation for California, and coming home to Navajo DOT, knowing that rural Arizona has a lot to offer, and a lot of opportunities are out there for us to invigorate the economy of our communities in rural Arizona, and also allow for more opportunities to come in to build a better home for all of us, so we can root, we can grow, and we can ensure that we thrive and flourish as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Doyle?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Again, Doyle Shamley, and I appreciate the attendance this evening, quite honestly. I can, as a board member formerly in a county or doing important hearings on waters of the U.S., it's often disheartening seeing no public engagement on very critical issues. So I appreciate you folks tonight. I do have the experience already legislatively drafting bills, pushing them through the House and Senate, and the process is already to fulfill this job. And I had already worked on many items that I know that we can accomplish in the next 2 years for the betterment of rural Arizona, Arizona as a whole, but of course an emphasis on LD7. And there's nothing wrong when you're a representative with being quite greedy and protective of your district, first and foremost. The needs, having had to travel throughout doing my former line of works, have allowed me to see an on-the-ground perspective from the various communities. And I can appreciate that different entities rate us as the most diverse district in America. With that, I feel that my past experience is going to help in LD7 and statewide legislative issues because I can communicate across many boundaries.
Thank you. Jamie Sita?
Thank you. I want to say thank you to all the folks that attended this evening, and I've had the honor of representing Legislative District Number 7 in the House in 2013 and 14, and this past year as the first Native American woman in the state Senate. I got the Native American Day bill passed. It only took 106 years, and I'm a mother, and I love my children. I think of every child in the district and here in Arizona as my child, and I think my strength is working with non-Native American communities and being Native American, being a veteran, being a mom, bridging communities, being respectful, and listening to all the folks that have that live in the district. And I think, you know, I see Arizona as one of the shining gems of the nation and the world, and I just want to continue down that road. Thank you.
Thank you. JL?
Hello, thanks for being here again. And I'm JL Mueller, and you can read more about me at jlmueller.com. Pretty simple. As an engineer, contractor, developer, as I said, I have toured the state looking for the proper communities for waterways businesses, you know, location, transportation capability, and workforce. So I pretty much know the state that way. I know the Four Corners area fairly well, all the way, you know, through LD7. And my entire life has been designed around finding the right place for the right business, and I've developed this into a personal venture for each and every individual that needs what they can't get now, and a great way to keep our children interested in Arizona and interested in staying in school. And that's it.
Thank you. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating in our forum this evening. And to our audience members, we thank all of you who took the time to come to inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov voter dashboard for a customized experience to find information on the general election, the candidates, the issues, and to view this debate on demand. Please fill out the debate evaluation form you received when you came in and return it to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is very important to the commission, and we will use that information to improve future debates. Thank you all for coming tonight, and feel free to stay and speak with our candidates. Good night.